Well, this is weird. Let's start with that. Obviously, for those that don't know me, I'm Jennifer Rowe. I'm the Chief Executive of Carers Link. And of course, normally I'd be welcoming you all to the AGM with reference to the glorious weather outside and reminding you where the fire exits are. But obviously this is quite different, very different. So I am going to share my screen just to get started here. And let's see if the technology works. I don't think it's... There we go. So now I can't see anybody. So again, this is going to feel very weird for everybody and especially me. Last year, some of you may remember that we'd chosen as our theme the burning issues that face carers, and we were anticipating with great excitement, or certainly I was, our first ever fire walk. 2019 had been quite a hard year, so we were really looking forward to 2020, only for, of course, to all disappear into a puff of smoke. It can be quite difficult to even remember last year. These have been such sad, strange and black times. However, we will also be sharing with you some and Carers Link. So to start the business element though of the meeting, I'm going to pass you straight to Derek McLean, our chairperson.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for technology allowing us to do this, joining us here today. When you do stand, or in my case sit here in November, it's sometimes difficult to reflect back that what we're actually reporting is last year. The things that have went on this year are overriding and in the forefront of everybody's minds, and we will talk about that a little bit shortly. But what I want to kind of quickly reflect on is that we had a theme initially which was black. Now, I can do black all day long. I've got a wardrobe full of black suits. But Jennifer had emailed and said we're adding in rainbow to this. And I just want to kind of quickly mention why I've got the background on, if you can see me, that I do. The image is called the Hubble Ultra Deep Field image. And it was taken back, if you've all heard of the Hubble Space Telescope, that was taken back in 2003 to 2004. And basically what happened, they just pointed the Hubble Space Telescope at an empty, dark point in the sky, left it open for about a year, and that was the image that it captured. Now, you might think that when you look up at the sky, it's black, it's empty, but see when you look closer at it, when you look for a longer time, if you look at that picture and you look at the colour and the variation and the shapes, it shows that even when you look at the blackest thing, there is colour, there is radiance. And that's how I feel this year, effectively, is that as much as we're looking at 2020 being black and horrendous, for me, when we look beyond that, we find elements of colour, elements of hope, elements that we are going to come out of this better. Now, it's difficult to ignore as I'm sitting here today talking about COVID and the impact that it's had, and we will come on to that. But as I say, being in November, it's difficult to sometimes remember that we were talking about last year before all this happened. So I just want to mention a few of the things from last year that have kind of stuck with me. And there's so many out there, so my apologies that if I don't mention something that you were involved with or that I hadn't talked about previously. They're all important, and they're all as important as each other's. But over the course of last year, there has been somewhere in the region of 250 groups being organised Now, those range from legal clinic to dementia support to yoga. That's an amazing amount of interaction that we have with each and every one of you. So roughly there's about 20 groups organised per month, which without you being there and without the wonderful staff of Carers Link organising, we wouldn't have what we do just now. In April last year, there was a few things that kind of struck me. The young carers had a trip to Skye and the White Waves Activity Centre for a week. Now, I'm sure if I remember back April last year, it might not have been the best of weather, so it does remind me of my old school trips to some of these outdoor centres where you're shoved in a lake somewhere where it's about 2 degrees, so all bravery to them. We also last April saw the start of the Mogai Camera Club, and also we had the pleasure to host our MP, Joe Swinson, who talked to a number of you guys and volunteers. In the summer of 2019, we got some money from CALA, which allowed us to put on a summer fun activity for the carers, which started off with a visit from Animal Man, which I'm sure had nice, fluffy, cuddly things, but also some pretty gross things that you can touch, but ended with a chocolate party. So we certainly allowed the funding that we subsequently got to be put to good use. This time last year, I stood here and talked about the challenges, as Jennifer said, the burning issues that faces Carers Link and the challenges that we had faced and continue to face. But I'm delighted with the effort that all the staff and the volunteers have put in to give us a lot more secure financial position today. Now, we're still not issuing company Maseratis to everybody, but we're in a lot better place than what we were last year. And that's down to things like the Firewalk, which brought in much needed revenue. We've had legacies and gifts, and we've had also some targeted projects funding, which we've applied for and got. Our strategy going forwards is going to be looking at more sustainable projects and groups. And that's about being able to make sure that what we are bidding to do aligns with our vision and values of Carers Link, delivers what is needed to our people that we support, and also in line with what the volunteers help us for in their invaluable time. One downside was we did lose the big lottery funding at the end of 2019. Now, the end of 2019 brought us into the start of 2020. And in March 2020, a new group was announced, which was Tech Talk. Now, whether or not there was a bit of visionary in there about how we would need that going into 2020 or not, I don't know, but it couldn't have came at a better time. So that brings us into 2020, or just before it. On the 30th of December 2019, the World Health Organization were made aware of an emerging flu-like virus in the Wuhan region of China. Details at that time are still sketchy, and it was confident that human-to-human transmission was not particularly easy and that it would run its course. But unfortunately, as we know, it didn't work out that way. And on the 23rd of March 2020, the UK was put into lockdown following increased infection rate and the high mortality rate that the disease had. How Carers Link staff and volunteers responded to that has been one of the most heartwarming things that I can imagine that's happened this year. From coordinating the issue of PPE to continuing those 250 groups, or as many of them as possible, via technology, via safe meetings, and just the sheer willingness of the staff, the volunteers, and the people who interact with us to continue that interaction and continue to do what we all do was heartwarming. And I leave Carers Link with a sense that it couldn't have been done any better in the situation and the circumstances that we found ourselves in. Throughout this year as well, and I will touch on some this year, some of the positives that have occurred is that the position of Carers Link has been increased. We've been recognised more nationally through the Global Make Some Noise appeal, as well as through the Mogai Herald running a feature on young carers, and that resulted in some funding from the Oak Tree Trust. I leave Carers Link knowing, with the knowledge that we can always bring light to people. Just as I say, when you're pointing at the darkest point in the sky, there is points of light there. And two of the things that I kind of want to reflect on as a point of light, just to leave you with. everybody now has a dog and everybody now has a gazebo. And that's probably two things that a couple of years ago I wouldn't have imagined myself ever owning. So I continue to have profound confidence in the staff, volunteers and the people who interact with us in CarersLink to continue what we do and continue after I am gone. I'm only a very, very, very small part of this. Unprecedented is a word that we hear a lot at the moment. Go on to mute is another one that which we're hearing is pretty much the normal just now. Or your camera's not on, that's another one. And as we go into next year with a vaccine hopefully on the horizon, we will remember that there was a time where we had normal. Now, it might be a new normal, but as far as CarersLink are concerned, we will continue to support you as we normally do, and no matter what shape that is. So that concludes what I want to reflect on today. So the next order of business that I have is we've got the election element where we're proposing new board members. Now, given how many people we have on here today, which is fantastic, instead of having a show of hands, which we would normally do, can I just ask that if there's any objection to any of those people joining the board, could you let us know, please? I'll give you a kind of few seconds just to kind of get yourself off mute or do what you have to do if you want to raise a point with us today. So I'll be quiet for a moment and just let anybody come into the call as they want to. Okay, thanks everybody. So that has been proposed. Now, at this time, I would normally pass over to Susan for the Treasurer's report, but Susan's doing her civic duty and jury duty this week. So I'm going to pass back over to Jennifer to provide the Treasurer's report. Once again, thank you all.
Thank you, Derek. But actually, one thing which we do need to do is just check right at the beginning the minutes of the previous meeting. We're also enthusiastic about this new technology. I think everybody received a copy of the minutes with the email invitation. Is that right? Am I on mute?
Yes,
no, I can hear you.
we did.
You did hear me, sorry.
Yeah.
I think I've just put myself back onto me. Sorry, I can only see my presentation. I can't see anybody at the moment. So just want to check if, I think we need a proposer and a seconder for the minutes of the previous meeting and just to check if there are any matters arising.
I'll propose them.
Thank you, Derek.
I'll second them, Callum.
Callum. Unfortunately, Callum, I don't think you were there last year. You wouldn't have been there.
The previous board meeting. Sorry, my apologies.
Sorry, no, you were certainly at the last board meeting. That was good. But no, it's the previous AGM. So that was last year. So was anybody?
Jennifer.
You did. Thank you, Jane. Thank you. All right. And now I shall fast forward. I take it there was no no questions from anybody. I will now fast forward to putting my hat on behalf of Susan. So unfortunately, Susan couldn't join us today because she is on jury duty. We're wondering how they're going to do this. Are they doing it virtually? Or somebody had also suggested, I think they're hiring cinemas so that the jury can distance themselves from each other. We're not quite sure. We're looking forward to finding out. But essentially, though, she has put in her apology. She can't make it today. So I will give you a brief run through of the finances. So as usual, the figures that we're showing on the screen are all shown in the pages 12 and 13 of the annual review that we also attached in advance. And obviously, if anybody's wanting a full copy of the accounts, either just contact the office by phone or by email, or even just mention it in the chat box at the side today. Our full income is listed here and it's detailed again in the accounts. And we're obviously very grateful to all our funders and donors and wish there was space actually to list everybody and recognise everybody. But as such, you'll notice right down at the bottom we've said 8 other restricted grants and donations. So I just want to give them an individual mention as well. One was the private donation for our switched on service. Again, somebody that had a great deal of forethought, not realising perhaps what was going to be coming our way. The cooperative, the Bailey Thomas Charitable Fund, the Cora Foundation, Cash for Kids, the Coalition for Carers, Calla Homes and Children's Aid. And the other income, just to explain that, is fees that we get from student placements, gift aid and investment obviously is our bank interest. As to be expected, our biggest costs are salaries of the staff that are providing the support services. So in essence, the cost are the services that we provide. On a line-by-line comparison, we actually do continue to make savings. Where there have been increases, they're actually really quite small, and are usually because it's matters beyond our control, or it's a reflection of money that we've been given in order to do a particular item or purpose or activity. The only aspect, if you're comparing this year from last year, that does show a significant increase is that of our accountancy professional and accreditation fees. But that's because last year we had the cost for both Investors in People Award and the Investors in Volunteers Quality scheme as well. So the quick of numbers amongst you will note that there's actually just over an overall surplus of just over 20,000. But this is mostly because of project funding that we received late in the year, which of course is going to be utilised in this current financial year or beyond. Over half our net assets are restricted. This means that we cannot spend it on any other purpose other than the purpose it was given for. But we have free or unrestricted reserves of just over 108,000. And that represents just less than 3 months running costs, which is the recommended minimum by charity regulators. And of course, given the pandemic, a lot of charities you may have been reading about are finding just why that was the recommended amount to have for emergencies. And finally, just nearly £8,000 was transferred from donations towards the cost of our core services. So on that note, I'll also pause for a second and just ask, are there any questions with regards to the accounts? I'm not going to give you as long as Derek, just in case you do ask a question. So if there are no questions, the board have recommended these accounts to you, and we also ask for a proposer and a seconder from the floor for the adoption of the accounts. And again, if you could just speak out and give your name for the record. Is there anyone willing to propose the accounts?
Jennifer, does it have to be somebody who was there last year?
No, not for the accounts.
So I'm happy to propose them in that case.
That's
I'm
great.
happy to second. Fiona Rose.
That's great. Thank you, Fiona. All right. Again, I would like to record the sincere thanks of the board to the accountants and our auditors, Bell Bar and Company in Mulgai, for all the guidance and support they provide. We conducted a review earlier in the year, but it's proposed that we retain Bell Bar and Co as accountants and auditors. So again, are there any objections to this proposal? Nope. That's great, thank you. Right, well, I will now take off my hat as standing treasurer and present our annual report as the Chief Executive again. So as we speak, the world is obviously still dealing with COVID, and of course in this area we've all just gone back into another lockdown. We cannot underestimate the enormous changes this has forced on every single one of us in actually what's a relatively short period of time. And it is another world, almost looking back on our financial year of 1920. It was a challenging year for so many reasons, but as they say, the show had to go on. But sadly, our wellbeing project stopped in May as local health funding was ended. Now, we knew that service was important, and carers had told us that in no uncertain terms. And now, a year later, it's been proven to be vital, and we're actively trying to secure funding so that we can actually focus more on carer health and wellbeing. And I'll come back to that later. However, our popular carer groups were saved thanks to funding from the Alliance. And this funding also allowed us to launch our first podcast as a way of reaching carers. Now, our young carers rather also enjoyed respite, not just in Skye, Loch Tay, Fife and Ardnamurchan. And as Derek said, it definitely looks cold, never mind fun. The staff and volunteer team were in touch with 374 new carers and provided direct support to 1,239. Now, the numbers are only just slightly down in the previous year because, of course, most of March was lost in terms of new carer referrals. But our volunteers alone supported 490 carers on Carers Call. And Elspeth is pictured here, one of our volunteers, winning the Bears Den Festival Community Award last year for volunteer in health and wellbeing. Now, we sadly lost some good staff through redundancy, new jobs and moving away. But we were also joined by Christine, our new fundraising manager, who had great success organising a sponsored walk, the Fire Walk, which I had the fun of doing, and the zip slide. Although I have to say, in the words of Heather, who zip slid across the Clyde, I think she said, never again. But you can definitely tell it's a different time. No social distancing or face masks in any of these pictures. And how things, of course, have changed. We've reached that point when we again acknowledge that our plans for this year went up in smoke. And not just our plans, your plans, everyone's plans, even Santa's plans, I discovered last night. We've all had it hard, very hard, but carers even more so. Carers were struggling before. We talked about that last year, but now they're doing it mostly without statutory supports, such as daycare or respite. And even when services have continued, they might have been reduced, or the carer has stopped them for fear of having somebody in their home. And there have been losses, many, many losses. Bereavement is always sad, it's always heartfelt. But now our carers are experiencing this in the most surreal of circumstances, without even a hug or a holding of hand or a gentle touch on the arm in support. And there've been tears, I have to say, obviously carers and from all of us as well. But there has also been community. And we have all clapped for health workers in the hospitals and those coming into our homes. And I especially have thanked those that have delivered our Amazon parcels and of course the food parcels as well, or even just our weekly shopping. There was also an international hunt throughout the world for teddy bears and windows. Now, I promised my boy a chocolate button for every teddy we saw, and I called a complete stop to that idea after he'd had 2 whole packets just walking in our street. I certainly wasn't going to continue that one. Closer to home, the Carers Link volunteers have inspired us all with their dedication to helping others, delivering PPE, delivering food, and continuing to provide the support on Carers Call on the telephone. And of course, our volunteers have also been helping people get online. Bar the telephone, digital has become our main, if not only, means of continuing some of our services, and it's vital for information and communication. We were really fortunate last year that the private donor recognised the importance of this long before COVID was a phrase, so we were able to quickly help more carers join in. And thanks to some additional funding and equipment from the Scottish Government, we can actually also supply the means to take part as well. So I urge you, if you do know of somebody, a carer that's not yet online and are unwilling or perhaps unable, please do try and persuade them, because there's so much help out there. There's also been innovation and creativity in the ways that we do things. Now, we moved quickly to working from home. Indeed, we were having our first Zoom meeting before lockdown was even officially announced. As Derek mentioned, our weekly groups and training courses moved online within a couple of weeks. And we also took on additional roles, having distributed 200 visors. By the end of April, we were also triaging carers for regular PPE supplies on behalf of the local health and social care community partnership. And to date, over 15,000 PPE masks have been triaged and distributed to local carers. Now, with the volunteers concentrating on supporting the regular carers on Carers Call and those that wanted additional support because of particular isolation, staff were able to focus their attention on the carers in crisis or sadly bereaved. And I want to give my special thanks and appreciation to the staff. Not only have we continued to receive new referrals, and the support given to carers has vastly increased in complexity and emotion, but the staff have been given their support and indeed their hearts whilst juggling work with their own caring, their own childcare, and coping with their own fears and worries. So my hat's off to everyone. Now, thanks also to a number of grants, we have been able to give away just shy of £28,000 to carers since April. And this has provided many trampolines, probably more for the young carers than the adult carers, but garden games and equipment, Netflix subscriptions, laptops, equipment for hobbies. Basically, carers were encouraged to come up with some creative breaks for some strange times. However, one of the grants was also to provide help for essential items, replacing broken cookers, beds, fridges. And sadly, this last fund is almost gone, but it's been a great source of help while it lasted. And that fund was through the Scottish Government, the emergency coronavirus provision. But there have also been fun challenges, laughter, and many, many miles. 22 of our camera-shy young adult carers kicked it off by walking a marathon over a week to say thank you to the NHS. And they all completed the challenge, taking many photos along the way. And they were also featured as part of the global, something's going on there, Make Some Noise campaign with Amanda Holden and Jamie Theakston from Heart Radio, supporting our charity challenge. And the young adult and young carers walked a virtual West Highland Way in their gardens or local area. Not everything, as you can see, was about the miles. There have been a few art challenges as well, with artwork of favourite pets and even of the staff. So to conclude, it's hard to think too far ahead when we're still in the midst of lockdowns and uncertainty. So I'm really just going to highlight two of the things that we know are definitely happening. After last year's AGM, we were lucky to be awarded 2 years additional funding from the National Lottery for a new project. Unfortunately, we had to put that on hold when the pandemic broke. We have, however, recently recruited Katrina Cameron to join the support and advocacy team. And part of her role would be to explore setting up a local Respitality project. Now, Respitality is a Scottish network with the aim of providing a short break for carers by connecting carer organisations with hospitality, tourism and leisure businesses who are willing to donate a break free of charge. And there's Respitality projects throughout the carer centres in Scotland. Now, obviously, it's not something that can happen during lockdown, but hopefully we'll be able to get this set up to pilot later next year. But our other project is already piloting. While it is almost impossible to quantify the toll this situation has taken on carers, we've been listening and appreciating how difficult these past months have been for everybody. You've faced increasing carer demands, increasing costs, and a huge increase in the physical and emotional impact of caring. So thanks to the charity challengers and the Global Make Some Noise appeal, we've received 6 months funding to launch Positive Changes. Now, this is a new project for both adult and young carers to try and help and address some of the physical and emotional strains of caring during COVID. And we're delighted to have literally just received some additional funding from Independent Age that will continue this pilot for adult carers into the late spring of next year. So on that positive note for the future, I'm going to end and basically hope that next year we can actually do this in person once more. It's quite funny when you do an AGM every year. This is now my 16th, and each year you dread the thought of standing up there and having to give a speech. And all of a sudden, when you don't do it, you find actually it's a lot easier than doing it in front of a computer screen. So anyway, on that note, I'm going to pass you over to Anne to say a few words. And I'm going to come out of the screen for the moment. If people are wanting to turn their cameras back on, then you're free to do so. And where's Anne gone?
Or
There's
perhaps
faces again.
Or maybe turn me off, Jennifer, more to the time. Well, on behalf of the board, and indeed everyone involved in Carers Link, I'm really happy to have this opportunity to publicly acknowledge the contributions both Margot and Derek, who we're losing this year, have made to the organisation during their 6-year sentence on the board. It says here, no, 6 years service on the board. Margot's insightful understanding of all the necessary business side of things and her ability to cut straight to the chase and call a spade is both refreshing and admirable. Derek, as the chairperson, has always been open and respectful of all viewpoints and welcoming to new members and giving them support. Drawing on his own professional experience, he has been a steady guiding hand through many challenges we have had to face in recent times. Not to mention juggling his day job while valiantly keeping our now Zoom-tastic board meetings under virtual control and on schedule-ish. Both Margot and Derek have been conscientious in their roles and committed to ensuring that going forward, Carers Link is in the best possible position to continue its vital role of supporting carers throughout East Dunbartonshire. And for that, we thank you both most sincerely. Can I also just take this opportunity to give a big shout out to our patisserie princesses who have been hard at work behind the scenes, a bit like Santa's helpers, and organising and boxing up. I gather Heather has been on the artistic committee of organising things, arranging things, setting them up so artistically, and our little Deliveroo divas, Claire, Amrit and Christine, for the doorstep deliveries, which was just a lovely thing. For me personally, mine has just arrived this morning, and it was just the thing to brighten up a dreich November morning. So that's all I want to say just now. So I'll hand back to Derek so that, and I'll give you proof, some of us, thank you for your spoiler alert, I still haven't opened my box. So for those of us who still have cakes to open and eat, I'll pass back to Derek so we can get the kettle on and get wired in. Thanks, everybody.
And thank you very much for those very, very kind words. I'm sure I'm not deserving of 1 or 2% of those. So thank you. So Margot, if you want to offer any words as well, please have the floor.
No, still on mute, Margot. It's the other
Can you hear
phrase
me
of the
now?
year. Yes.
Can you hear me? No, it was just to say thank you for all the nice words, and thank you for the lovely presents, and thank you for an enjoyable 6 years. I can't believe it's 6 years. I honestly can't. But I've enjoyed it, and I hope I'll keep up with Carers Link and know what's going on, and maybe be able to do something when I get my new knees. And I just wish everyone all the best for the future, and thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Yeah, you will both be greatly missed. I mean, Margot, obviously you were a volunteer before you joined the board, and Derek, you've had 2 of the toughest years as any chairperson has ever known, steering us through a pandemic. Greatly appreciate your support, and definitely hope that our paths continue to.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely keep in touch, and I'll definitely try and do anything I can for you.
Thank you. Right, back to you, Derek.
One of the things, though, that I would say is that as a chairperson, all I'm really here to do is offer some advice, guidance. Sometimes it can be taken, sometimes it's not. But primarily, I'm there to make sure the board meetings run on time and get through the agenda. The work that has been done to go through the last 2 years, the financial challenge and the COVID, the pandemic, is 100% down to the staff, volunteers, and the people that we interact with each day. You could so easily see how this could affect people, their ability to carry on when they're at their darkest moment. But we've continued, and that's down to you all. The board play a small part in that by providing some guidance, some governance, but it's you that make this charity what it is. And so on behalf of myself and anybody else who wants to follow this sentiment, my heartfelt thanks to every one of you for how you've made this. So before I start tearing up, I just want to close the AGM and just ask for the opportunity if anybody's got any other current business that they want to raise with us today. And there's no further closing marks from me, so I'll open the floor up for any other current business. Okay, thanks everyone. Now, what I would say is that, sorry for the spoiler alert, Anne, but the cakes that you can now open, we're going to have a coffee and a chat and possibly eat your cakes in some of the breakout rooms, which are all invited to. So once again, thank you very much. You'll be sorely missed, but not for another 20 odd minutes or so yet.
Now, because there's 50 people here today, which is brilliant. We're going to split. Claire's putting you all into smaller groups again because it's a bit easier to chat that way. Claire's disappeared off my screen, but hopefully she's working away on this in the background.
Can you make me host, Jennifer?
Yep, I can certainly.